All right, give us a little demo, Matt.
Would you like me to crash so you can see it all?
No. I mean, like, just you driving. Yeah, there you go. Oh, well, okay.
Oh, there's your... Oh, God. I'll tell you that felt like I did catch air, and I did slam down. Okay.
All right, hit a big skid for us.
Big skid? Right.
Big skid. Oh, wait, gotta remember to move the seat back, too. I can do that later. Whatever.
Alright.
Big skid. Big third gear skid.
I don't think I feel safe with third gear down this here mountain.
Matt, it's a toge, okay?
My bad.
Oh, good skid. Woo! I'm sure somebody's gonna ask, and someone's gonna be like, "Oh, that's an 8.6 dash." We are indeed in Alexi's Beans 8.6, aka Noriyara, on YouTube. And you can find that at youtube.com/Noriyara. But yeah, we're on a fruit. I always call it Fruits line, but technically it's Fruits line, and it's a where is this supposed to be? Tsukuba? Yeah, it's Tsukuba. So if you're looking for the map, it's called EK Tsukuba. Fruits line, and this is the free roam version, so you can go either way. So what do you think after tweaks? Way better, way worse?
It feels better. It's not as violent. Oops. It's not as violent anymore.
Does it feel realistic though? As somebody who is an IRL, like, competitive drifter.
Oof. Does it feel realistic?
Did that feel realistic?
Crashing does.
Okay.
Drifting, I don't know.
Do you think it could feel realistic if we did all the things we need to do to finish the calibration?
I think so.
Because like the pedal feels great now, wheel feels great now, seating position's better.
I almost want to say that you might get a different answer, for every person that you ask, because...
Well, I'm asking you, Matt 7, your answer.
I think that you could get pretty close. I think there's certain things that you just can't, like mimic or...
Simulate?
Yeah.
Sure.
And there's a lot of stuff that you feel that probably you're not going to feel in this, because to give you this one feeling, you're going to have to get rid of something else, because you can't, you don't have, I don't know, what's the word, like, the reason we have clipping on the steering, right? So while it's in that gray zone while you're going, you still have all this extra room for it to vibrate and give you feedback for bumps, dips, skids, and then once you clip, you don't get anything anymore. You don't get any extra information. So,
but that's a limit of the simulation, right?
Yeah. So I guess that's where it'll come into play. I think that this left to right motion is pretty good. It could be a little smoother, I guess. I think sometimes it's a little too violent, and it's not necessarily like that.
Okay, so let me rephrase the question. For the purpose of training, say you were in my shoes and your goal is to get to Formula D, for example. Or rather, your goal is to learn to drift first. Then your goal is to essentially become the face of drifting and get to Formula D, a la Adam LZ. Do you think that this was a valid, I guess, way to do that versus going out and dropping 30 on a comp car, etc., etc.?
That's a tough question. I personally would probably buy a real car and do it that way. But
even with the amount of seat time you could get on sim?
That's where the debate comes into play, because you have the cost factor of consumables in a real car, but there are things that you'll learn in a real car
that you can't learn on sim.
Yes, and sometimes if you, depending on what you're doing in the sim, you can develop bad habits in the sim.
Like the no fear thing we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah, but I think that, what's a good, let me think of a good one. relying on, I don't know, some of these cars have like excessive angle, I guess. You know, some cars are like idiot proof, for lack of better words, right?
Right.
I think that relying on driving a bunch of these cars that are pretty much fun to drift, which is, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just don't develop any basic skills or like the footwork or the handwork or steering work, whatever you want to call it, because you just, you know, foot down and go, foot down and go. You brake when you need to, you brake when you need to, right?
Right.
Whereas, like you're already saying, you like driving this car because it's so underpowered.
Yeah.
And it does take, like, don't lift.
To be specific, you're talking about like the over-tuned Tando Buddies kind of gravy garage, like 90-degree steering angle, that kind of thing.
Like that. I can't really speak for gravy garage or anything, but
well, versus more like, say, like the Beans 86 is more like a stock. Well, I mean, it's not stock because it's engine swap, but it's more of a low angle, higher grip, more work kind of car.
yeah, that Nakamura car you were.
The Naoki car?
Yeah, that car. I don't know if it's specifically because of your setup and your wheels and your pedals, but that car is actually a lot of work to drive.
Yeah.
But
so if you were like, let's rephrase this, and
Yeah.
I'm not trying to push the conversation like a certain way or anything.
no, I got you.
Right. But like, if you were in sim driving the correct cars with the correct people, do you feel that at some percentage, maybe that be 80% or 90% of how good it would be if you were to do the exact same thing in a real car, do you think that's like a legitimate like strategy?
I think that it is close, and I think that it won't. I think it is a tool that you can use 100%. Being quick with saving yourself with the steering, for example, like I mentioned earlier, the small corrections that you're doing, catching the wheel, we'll call it coordination with your hands and the wheel, like
Sure,
you know,
wheel
like,
dexterity.
yeah, trying to fix yourself like on the fly will 100% translate, I believe, in IRL, because I mean that stuff happens. Like you'll just be going, and sometimes you'll just have to, you'll feel the wheel fight you, and you've got to catch it.
Right.
But if you're expecting like Tando Buddies, not to throw that out, but like
I mean, it's okay.
you're just
dude.
like, man, I can left foot on the ground and like pretty much just drift this whole thing with just throttle and, you know, one arm kind of thing.
It's like Forza drifting or car X drifting.
Yeah.
So okay, so let me ask you this then. I guess is a better way to phrase this. If I were to say drive 5 to 6 days, you know, 6 to 8 hours a day on sim, and then every weekend hit the track in a relatively stock car, do you think that would give me the best potential to make my goal of FD?
I'm gonna say yes, because what makes great drivers, everybody's obviously got, like, some people are just naturally better than others by
Right.
talent, but ultimately in the end, seat time, and that's not just with drifting, that's with all types of motorsports, right?
Right.
So if you're putting in the seat time on the sim, and it's like muscle memory the more you do it, so that's helping you with the way a car is going to react, and you're driving many different cars on here, but the principle's still the same. And
Mechanics wise, right?
yeah, I'm pretty close, depending on, you know, some of the mods are a little bit more, we'll call it cartoony than others, but
Sure, I like cartoony. That's a good adjective.
but
Clown cars, even.
yeah, you could say that. But in the end, the game, it's just a game. It is a simulation racing game.
But it's still a game.
Yeah, and I mean, it can produce.
I think with the right mindset, it can produce the right results.
Yes,
I
yeah,
think.
and I mean, even as it is right now, we've got so many great modders out there that make cars like this that someone can just hop in who.
Yeah, we've done zero tuning on this car. Like,
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, not just myself, but other people that drive IRL can hop on this game, and probably within, 5 minutes of just getting used to simply, like, the controls and stuff, can hop into this car and just start
Right.
going at it, kind of thing.
right.
I think that speaks a lot to, like you're asking me, can you use this as practice for IRL?
Right. Because
And-
ultimately, at the end of the day, there are competitions in sim, but my goal is not necessarily to be the best sim driver, but it's to be, you know, a top tier drifter, as in IRL drifter.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't care about the sim community, because as you guys know, I absolutely fucking adore the Assetto Corsa community on Twitch and all the friends I've made, and you guys are like, you know, the reason I'm able to do this, right? But I've been very forward about my goals in the past, which is I want to become the face of drifting. I will become the face of drifting, and I will earn my spot in Formula D. So, with that being said, Matt, how many out of 10 would you rate this experience of full motion DD sim driving with the lens of it being a tool to train for IRL drifting?
I can't say 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I don't. If you did, I would fucking kick you out right now, because it's definitely not 10 out of 10.
I would say maybe like 7 out of 10. Probably like a 7 out of 10. And the reason for that is, I think this is one of those things where before you had this rig and everything like that, and you were just drifting single monitor. I don't know if you were using single monitor before, but single monitor, wheel and pedal, computer check. From that,
What would you rate that?
I'd probably say that's like a 6. And where I'm getting at with that is, as you upgrade, like, don't get me wrong, this feels amazing, and this is like super awesome to be able to experience this, and it does provide so much more information and feedback than just my wheel and pedal doesn't give me. But I think as you step up from entry level wheel to a higher end wheel and pedal to we'll just say a rig and then motion rig, I think you're, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know how to
Diminishing returns?
Yeah, exactly. Thank
Sure.
you. So the jump from 6 to 7, that doesn't sound like a lot, and maybe to some people it makes it seem like a waste of time, or like, why would you even bother with that if it's not that big of a jump? But ultimately it comes down to, again, depending on what you're using it for. For you, this is literally a tool, right?
Right.
This is a training tool for you to, for one, you're learning how to drive, stick, and drift, because you don't even know how to do that in real life right now.
Right.
And watching you now, I don't know, how many days has this been now? Like, I mean,
3 months or
3
so?
months?
Yeah.
From then to now, and seeing you be able to tandem with some of these guys, that's a huge.
Do you think I could have done the same thing drifting once a week in real life? Because ultimately that's really all you could get, if even. Right? Unless you're going to sneaky spots. You know what I mean?
I want to say yes, and based on my own personal experience from when I started out, and how fast I went in from running singles at Monroe and then going straight into like tandeming and stuff. Maybe it's different for everyone, but it was only natural to like, okay, now on the screen here I can visually see the car and gauging the distance and stuff like that. It didn't seem as hard as I thought it would be. So I think that maybe like 3 events, 4 events maybe, just drifting, getting to know the car, getting to feel it, sliding, holding a drift around a corner, just feeling all these different techniques and like ways to drift, and then putting you next to someone else that's leading, and you don't have to be banging doors with the guy, but at that point you're tandeming, right?
Technically, yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah. So, and then what will grow you is driving with a group of guys, so you can see how that person drives and like slowly inch your way closer and closer and become confident in your skill of timing someone else. Spatial awareness of the car, like that, I'm actually really terrible with the spatial awareness in this rig, because when I was tandeming earlier, it felt like I'm like right on his door, and when we're swinging and transitioning,
Right.
I'm like, dude, I'm gonna like eat my hood on the back of his car, and never did that happen.
Right. But I mean, I think that's the same in a real car, because if you get more time in it, then you'll like know your distances,
Yeah,
right?
well, sure, and that's probably it too. So,
Cause see, this is where I'm at right now. I would say, I would rate this an 8 to 8.5. It's not perfect. I think VR might bring it to like a 9, maybe, which is pretty high. Maybe I think actually no, VR would bring it to an 8.5, and I'm probably at about an 8 right now.
okay.
But I think that if I were to do this in real life, I don't think it's possible. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason being, it's impossible, I think, to do the live stream bit if I was driving IRL 4, 5, 6 hours a day, every day, which is what I would need personally, because I do not have the talent, and I can only obtain results based on practice, dedication, drive kind of thing.
Sure.
Me knowing myself personally. And B, I think if I could even do one event a week, I'm not saying the cost would be prohibitive, but the fact that I can literally drive as long as I want and not worry about the cost is a significantly less anxiety inducing environment for me.
Well, I do want to interject there.
Yeah,
So,
please.
This is exhausting actually to drive,
Really?
but I think that when you experience your first track day and you're like there from gates open to track cold, I want to say I am far more exhausted from an actual track day
Right.
than I would be probably on this. I don't honestly know what the big difference is between the two, but there's something about you show up at 9 a.m., track goes hot at 10:30, and you're there till 6, and like towards the end of the day, your head is like pounding, you're fucking freaking fatigued, eyes are red, and you're like full blown burnt out. You've just had so much seat time, and that's what it used to be like. Once I caged the car and I was just doing tandem runs all the time, and there's very little wait time. If you go to a track event and they're running the single lines, usually you'll do like, I don't know, maybe like 6 runs, 7 runs before the next run group comes out. But when you're doing tandems and you have a cage, dude, they are literally, one single guy will go, and then they'll throw a guy, 2 to 5, or everybody in the tandem line, and just go. So you'll come off the track and you only have to wait for one guy to go, and you go again, and you'll just keep on going. So you get a lot of seat time. I think that's important though too, is the whole part of like coming to a stop instead of hot lapping.
And like reflecting on what you've...
Yeah.
Right.
So don't get me wrong, like sometimes I wish I could just hop on the track, like Spirit Peaks does that, where you get on and you just drift and drift and drift. And it's fun to do that. It's kind of like one of those things to do mindlessly. It's like being at a skate park. But when you're like trying to progress or trying to do something different, that guardrail was sticking out. I think coming off and stopping for like 30 seconds is a good wind down, a good download, and just reassess the things like, okay, I couldn't chase that guy very well. I messed up doing this while I was chasing him. So this next run, when I go, I'll do it a little bit differently. I'll try this. Or
Right.
I'll hit the bank.
So there's more import, I guess, is what you're saying, when you're driving IRL than when you're driving on sim. Because I absolutely agree with that. I think like I was telling you that earlier. It's like, man, I'll just slam myself into the same turn for like 2 hours until I like get it perfect, and then I'll just keep trying to do it over and over again, which is something you cannot do in real life.
You just don't get that luxury of doing that.
You just can't do that because like A, it's not a private track.
Yeah.
B, eventually your car is going to take wear and tear, and if you dump it in the wall, then you're fucking done for the day, right?
Yeah.
So there are some advantages to sim, and this isn't me just trying to like bias like towards doing this or like the commitment, like cost fallacy kind of thing, but this is me ultimately trying to determine the best way for me, secondly, to document my experiences and my conversations completely unedited, and have that available for you guys so you guys can make your own decisions, because ultimately what works best for Matt is not necessarily what works best for me.
And also, disclaimer, I'm not a professional drifter.
Professional drifter Matt.
I'm not a professional.
Comp drifter Matt.
I'm not a professional
with
drifter.
over a decade of experience, and he kind of knows his shit, but he's way too fucking humble. Point is what works for Matt doesn't work for me, or may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for you guys. Right?
Just hit him with different strokes.
Different strokes for different folks, But in my opinion, I think a combination of the two is the most successful. Would be the most successful, I guess, training regime. So that means sim drifting every day and physically drifting as much as you can. I think some combination of the two is the winning recipe. Matt, what do you think?
I think so. There's guys that have actually,
the VDC guy, right?
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
the guy, he like hopped in his first car, doesn't have a license, and then like did some tandems with a professional drifter guy. Won the sim.
That one I don't know, but I was gonna say Aaron Losey from Lone Star did an interview. I don't remember the guy's name, but I remember he was talking about some of the experience that he did. He was actually driving on a Santa Corsa and was doing competitions on there before it was either before or he was doing it in preparation for their Lone Star Street. I think it's called Street Legal or Texas Street Legal.
Yeah.
And he ended up winning that. So there's definitely a lot to learn from sim drifting. Obviously, first and foremost is the whole catching the wheel, learning to steer.
Yeah, for me it was learning what the clutch pedal do. Like,
well, yeah,
you know what I mean?
And if you don't know how to drive stick, then this whole extra pedal here is like all new territory, and you don't even know when to use it. Like, it's just a lot of stuff you'll end up learning. I don't know. There's certain things that I'm terrible at explaining because it's more of a feel. A good example of that would be when you're coming into a corner, the difference from you're mid-drift sideways from like being clutched in and having the whole drivetrain, just disengaged and you're sliding with it versus if you were to remain clutched in and you're like sliding like that, how the difference in how it scrubs speed and the difference in, I don't know, the arc that the car is going to take. That's something that you just learn by doing and feeling. You can kind of feel it in this, I guess. But I don't know. That might be something that you'll just have to feel when you take your car to the track.
That's the problem is I can't really properly have this conversation because as of yet I've driven a manual car like twice in real life.
Yeah.
And it was for such a short period of time. I was literally just moving cars around or whatever, right? So it's for such a short period of time that I can't really remark as to how tangible the difference is between sim and real life drifting. Secondly, not driving stick in real life, I would be hesitant to say that if you were to take my direct path in which you do not know how to drive stick and you want to become a competitive or professional drifter, and talking about how long that would take in terms of time, because learning and being comfortable with manual with 3 pedals and a shifter is takes time, and it takes seat time, really. And so when you have, like for me, when you have a very realistic sim like a Assetto Corsa and a very realistic set of pedals and shifter, it does cut that down and it makes it more analog or more one-to-one in that sense, but it still takes time, right? Because your split second reaction is the difference between you ending up in a wall or in somebody else's door or just, you know, doing a fat skid, right? So like personally, and this is not to like, you know, make weird arguments for the sake of making weird arguments, but like I think that for me, as far as I know, from the time that I started and up until now, this is the best way that I can think of going about things. And I think that, you know, like Matt said, different strokes for different folks, but I think some combination of simulation and real life driving, specifically if you're driving every day, whether it be on sim or real life, will probably do you a lot better than driving once a month. You know what I mean?
For sure. I would say that just the sim drifting that I do in general right now is what keeps me pretty, I don't know, not so rusty. After the FC went down and I took that long ass break, when I bought the FRS, I think that the span from the last event to then was probably like, I don't know, a year and a half-ish, almost 2 years. And I literally bought the FRS, and on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, that Saturday I showed up at Evergreen on a whim. Like there was like an hour left of open drift, and I just showed up and it started driving and drifting stock, and it was like I never stopped.
And you would attribute that to sim?
Yeah, I would say so, just because I also did take a break from sim driving in general shortly after that.
Because you drive a lot of grip on sim too, right?
For a while I played a lot of the Seta Corsa competition, so I was doing a lot of like GT racing. But when I took a break, I didn't take the FRS to the track for a while, and then when I went back, I needed like 2 or 3 laps to like reacclimate myself to the way the car was just gonna behave, almost like riding a bike. But granted, I can I think most people can hop on a bike after 10 years and it doesn't feel like, you know, you skipped a day. But drifting and driving is something you learn as an adult for most people, so it's a skill that you can not lose, but it's a skill that you it'll dull over time.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like any skill.
So
Yeah.
this right here definitely helps me, because if I can just, my brain knows what's going on with the car right now, and I know how to manipulate the car. I can left foot brake. I know what that's gonna do mid drift. Like, it's just, I don't know, muscle memory. Keep doing it and you'll...
Do you think that there's benefit to full motion then?
So, benefits?
Yeah. Or do you think it's just a flex thing?
Maybe way back when it was more of a flex thing. I think now there's merit to it. I think one of the biggest problems with it back then was latency.
Sure, yeah.
Because I mean, this little chicane right here, for example, the snap from left to right, especially in an 8.6, is very fast. You know, whether can the rig produce that, or is it going to be like left, right, and then the rig's going to go throw you around, and you're already into the
Like already into it, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we have this set up properly, so I can't remark on this, but to me it feels pretty synchronous.
Yeah, it feels good. It was definitely way more violent earlier. But like I was telling you, when you're actually in the middle of a drift, like this, for example, it feels pretty smooth, and the vibration that I was feeling before is usually, if I feel that vibration when I'm at the track, that's like telltale of my tires are chunky, or they're delaminating, or, you know, something is funky with the rear end. But I was just getting that, like, I pull the e-brake and get on it, and immediately I'm like feeling this weird,
like, vibrate.
Yeah, pulsating vibration. So I was like, oh man, does the Seta Corsa have that feature? Like, is that something I just never noticed because I don't have a rig, or what, but yeah, I think when you finally get this whole thing tuned and figured out,
Yeah, I think moving the monitors around and changing the steering position, or not the steering position specifically, but the crossbar height, so we can bring the monitors forward, will probably
that's one other thing too.
be
is,
huge. Or not huge, but it'll
the
be...
field of view, I think, is very important. I think that having the field of view correct, so that what you're perceiving is pretty close to what you'll perceive in real life, will make this experience better, and you'll learn, and you can obviously transition it and stuff like that. But this speed, it's still taking me time to get used to, but even a single monitor, I can gauge my speed very well driving. But for whatever reason, triple screen, it's like as soon as I'm going, and this, as soon as I'm sideways, it feels like I'm going 100 miles an hour.
Interesting. See, for me, I feel the opposite. I feel like on triples, I'm just going really, like,
Slow.
normal
To me,
speed.
it feels slow. Like,
And then, like, yeah, well, no, and then on single monitor, because of the high FOV, I feel like I'm going like a million fucking miles an hour, and I have no idea how fast I'm going.
So I personally don't run pretty high field of view on the single. I'd say I'm pretty close for the most part, just because it definitely feels unrealistic when here's my wheel, and then here's the guy's wheel, right? And then there's the dash, because then it feels like, man, my pivot point is not where it should be.
Yeah. But when it's like this feels okay.
Yeah,
it could be better, but
this actually feels pretty okay. The snappiness of it going like that, from what I remember, feels pretty close to an 8.6. The 8.6 is snappy, just like a Miata is, and
short wheelbase problems.
It's like if you stuck your finger on a Hot Wheel on the hood and pivoted, that would be more like what an S chassis feels like, or I don't know, JZX or something, because it's such a long wheelbase, and where the weight is, it's like swinging like a pendulum. But in a Miata, it's like, this is the front and rear, it's like almost dead center, right? So anytime it pivots, it's going to be very quick and abrupt, versus like this, where it's like long and swingy, for lack of a
long and swingy.
Yeah. So I wish you had a Hot Wheel, but yeah, this feels like that when you kick over from this corner right here, for example. We'll just go.
The car's really slow.
This snap,
Yeah.
that abruptness feels pretty normal to me. Like, that's playing this. I pick this car and I'm playing this car. That's what I expect out of it, and I'm getting what I expect out of it. If we were to hop into one of the S chassis or something, or the JZXs,
And it did that would feel wrong.
yeah, I'd be like, whoa, that was a little weird. Those almost are more. The JZX should almost feel kind of like a late. I don't know. In the game, it feels like a real lazy car.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the WDTS one's got 450 torque. And so you can kind of just get huge angle, and it's also on 18s or whatever.
Yeah,
So it's
and
like,
I mean, I have no idea how good that model is.
no idea either, yeah. Supposedly, WDTS is built off of S15 physics. I don't know how true that is, but that's
and
what
see,
I've
if
heard.
that's true, I don't have S15 experience either.
Yeah, I've never driven one. I've never even seen one in America.
Yeah, that's why, like,
Like,
earlier,
in the wild.
The FRS, the stock FRS that Kunos has on here,
Yeah.
I can jump
Yeah,
in
okay,
and
so
drift
with the
it.
stock FRS, though, sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
with the stock FRS, did you feel like this was pretty damn close, not kind of close, not close at all? Like, what would you say?
I would say it feels close. I feel that the rig is doing this stuff. The rig is emulating more of the Ford. I don't know how to explain it. It didn't feel like it was emulating like the bumps and stuff in the road that I would feel in the FRS.
Yeah.
Even for stock, you could still feel some of the movement. But once you start like really giving it cornering and sliding, it was like, oh, this feels like when I took my car to park.
Wow.
Other
Okay.
than the track being a little narrow.
Too narrow. Yeah. Yeah. But the car, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Was like, that felt pretty good.
Yeah, the car felt pretty good. And it's just natural, like trying to drift that car on here at that track in the same gears. I'd probably say like it's about 90%, because there's some situations where the car just
And to think that you would say 90% and then say 7 out of 10 earlier.
I know that, and that's because every one of these cars and models and stuff, it's just all so different. And
Right, but like rating of the rig, because I'm really pushing this aspect, because you said 90% on that car specifically, but would that bump you up to at least a 7.5 if not an 8?
that, no, because the question of whether the rig would be, how do I rate the rig
As a tool for training,
Yes.
in regards to doing skits,
yes.
and you'd still put that at 7.
Yeah, and that's because there's stuff that's lacking
Right.
in it.
And there has to be. There's no G forces, and that's a huge part.
Yeah, and okay, so let me think of how to actually
Simulated or otherwise, I guess.
The FRS being 90% and me rating the rig at a 7 out of 10 sounds contradictory.
But, I mean, it's your opinion, so it's completely subjective to only you.
Sure, but
Right.
I think that the FRS, it being 90%, it's still missing aspects of it, but I can get into it, and when I get into it, it feels very, very familiar. Like,
Right, so that's what I'm saying. Would you at least rate it an 8? I'm not pushing for that. I'm just wondering, because, like, if you'd said, like, it was, like, kind of close or whatever, I'd be like, okay, fine, 7 seems very fair. But if you said it was, like, 90%, I'm like, okay, well, would that put you at an 8 in terms of using this as a training tool to become a better driver for whatever your goals are?
Yes, this definitely will help you out. And like I said, I'm not a professional, but I know there are professionals out there that use sim rigs,
Yeah.
and they're better drivers. They're hands down better drivers than me. And the sim rig does help. And using the sim to learn a track before you go there also helps too. Learning track markers on the sim will help you in real life too. Like, I ended up finding a pretty decent map of the ridge that's in Shelton.
Yeah.
And I drove on that. I haven't driven the ridge in person, but when I went there for Time Attack to go and walk the track and stuff, and then played that, I was like, oh man, that looks pretty damn close. Although the markers that are on the game are not there in real life, so I don't know what that's about. But I'm sure that there are guys that have that track that go to the ridge and probably use that when they're not actually doing track days.
For time attack purposes and whatnot.
Yeah, and just maybe even just driving and maybe trying different things, because that lack of fear, right?
Yeah, that's going to be a huge problem, because you've seen me drive,
Yeah.
and sometimes I will literally just 100 mile per hour send it into a corner that you should not 100 mile per hour send it to, just to kind of see what happens.
Yeah.
Or because it looks fun.
Yeah.
Versus, you know,
So like going this way on this.
you also beat on the car with like no abandon.
Yes. You in real life, you hopefully will learn mechanical sympathy. In the game, it's just like, I'm gonna clutch kick this thing forever. It's never gonna break.
Right.
Or I'm gonna sit on limiter and it's never gonna cook the oil or spin a bearing or detonate.
Just
Right?
throw a rod through the
Yeah,
hood.
and you don't have to worry about on the game when you run low on fuel. You're like, I'm gonna swing it here and I only have an eighth of a tank.
Whatever.
I'm gonna
yeah.
starve the fuel pump. Nope, that doesn't happen in the game, right?
Right. Yeah, or another good one is like tires, right? Because most of us play with no tire wear, right? So like you never.
A lot of the servers online are like that.
Yeah.
A lot of the competition servers are not like that though. So those high horsepower cars,
Yeah.
usually it's like, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 passes.
You got to change tires.
And the tires immediately feel like they're on glass, and you're like, oh shit. So it does change from run to run, which is kind of cool. I don't.
And also temperature of the track. Most people just run at a standard 30 degrees Celsius, but like
That is one thing I don't. I haven't done a
it'll
lot
change
of.
like the amount of grip and
So in a set of course de competition, the temperature of the track and ambient temperature play a huge part in your tire pressures and the grip and everything like that. On here, I don't know. I honestly don't know how big of a factor that plays.
I'm not sure either. I just know that it does
Yeah.
play a factor.
Yeah, so I'm sure if you made the track like cooking hot, all the tires would not feel that great. They should. I imagine they would feel greasy if they're all super hot. But that's not something I can speak to.
I have no idea.
That's the other thing too. Like I said, I'm not a professional. I can only speak to like, you know.
I would say you know
drifting
more
stuff.
than most would be my assumption. In the 9 years that I've known you, or 8.5, whatever fucking years I've known you, I don't think anything you've ever said has been inherently wrong. So that's a pretty good track record in my book. Like, you've always been like, hey, I don't know the answer to this, but here's what I think. And I'm like, okay, I'll take this as like a subjective opinion rather than an objective fact, right? Like,
Yeah, I don't know everything. There are definitely aspects to, we'll just say motorsports or racing in general that I am not the professional on. I'm not the best at it. I understand a lot of the theories and stuff behind it, but can I teach it? No, I can't. I can talk about it a little bit.
I think you're a pretty good teacher.
I can teach what I've experienced and what I know, but
Your style of teaching is like, okay, let me explain to you the theory behind something, and then let me show you how I do it, and then you can figure it out for your own, which is the kind of teaching that I like, because it makes sense to me if somebody explains to me the way that something physically works, and then they show me an example of it, and then let me figure it out. Like, that makes sense to me. I mean, to other people, they need to be told, or handheld, or shown, or whatever, or like, but for me, that works. So I would say you're a pretty good teacher.
well, I appreciate it.
I mean, consider how much time you spent telling me, like, oh, this is how you, like, clutch kick. Oh, this is how you, like, do a skid and shit like that. And, like, 3 months now, and I'm getting doors. I mean, you saw me during that train earlier running tandems.
Yeah. Actually, I just thought of something.
What's
kind
up?
of like something that I guess you're not going to learn in a sim. This isn't really for drifting, but like when you're spinning out, for example, or you're coming to we'll just say I'm spinning, just the natural clutch in and brake. at the
Clutch
same
in and
time.
brake, yeah.
When you're coming to a stop, it's
Yep.
just like.
Anytime
especially
you
if you're-
predict that you're either going to spin out or come to a stop, it's always clutch in, half brake.
Yeah. So, because I mean, in the game, you don't have to worry about like I'm gonna go
Like
and I
stalling.
spin, and someone just gonna say
Yeah.
like this and stop.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that in real
No.
life.
And you also don't want to leave it in gear.
Yeah. So, because you don't want to be dead on the track for one, sitting there trying to get the car to start, and you've got a train of cars coming behind you. So it's like,
There's no TP to pit on IRL. Which is why I'm flipping the camera on for this part. Which is why on Shadow Realm servers, we recommend, for the purpose of realism, for the purpose of training, and for the purpose of, immersion, that you don't TP to pits. And the reason behind that is because it's a learning server, you're going to spin out. But B, I think that it's more important to figure out what you do after you spin out, rather than interrupting a train or whatever. Because if you want to go on a fucking sick train or do some sick skids with other people, there's definitely servers for that, right? There's places for that where, like, for example, Mia's server, Rapti's server, or Extra's server, where they just do huge trains the whole time, which is really fun. It's really cool. You should definitely join. But on our servers, the entire point is this is where we learn, and we're using sim as a tool to become better drivers in general, right? And that's not saying we're doing something better or different, but for our purposes, it's better, in my opinion, right? So, granted, when I play on, like, Jack, I was on Jack's server the other day doing Suji lights. I reset the pit all the time, right? But my goal is, when I primarily am drifting on my servers, is not to make it a habit to TP to pit, because TP to pit doesn't exist in real life. And one thing that is apparent to me, and relatively unfortunate, because I hope that one day everybody can drift IRL, is it seems that a lot of people on Assetto, particularly on Twitch, either don't drive in real life, they're too young, or they don't have a license, or they don't have the capabilities to drive IRL. That's not really a concern for them, and I get that. But as somebody who's looking to do competitive drifting in real life, I want my muscle memory to be as close to the real thing as possible, meaning don't reset to pit unless you absolutely have to, or like whatever, try and get out of the way, try to be respectful on the road, try and do the things that you would generally be required to do in real life, so that's pretty much that. But
some servers actually, it'll say in the rules, like, it is common courtesy to TP to pits for sure, especially if you're on online servers in general. You're driving with a bunch of strangers, so TP to pits for sure.
yeah.
But I guess if you want to get used to doing this, oh shit, spinning out, and like having the awareness of cars come by, I guess in the situation where I'm at specifically, I can't go anywhere. So I would hope that the guys coming would straighten out and not send me off into Narnia. But sometimes
some of this shit happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not the end of the world. Now, intentionally ramming people, that's a dick move, right? Or if I hit somebody and I don't TP to pit, for example, if I hit somebody, I say, hey man, my bad, I didn't mean to hit you. And they're like, oh, it's all G, But I think that it's important for me personally to not make those kind of muscle memory habits, right?
That's what the universal MB in chat is for.
Yeah, MB and AG.
Yep. You go to
or NP.
US server, European server, wherever, South America, Japan, MB works everywhere.
Yeah. Anyways, we're approaching an hour on this video.
Oh
my battery's almost dead.
Oh my god.
Would you like to... I have to get to bed soon because I have work tomorrow, and then you have work tomorrow.
Yeah, I gotta drive still.
You still gotta drive home, but would you like to finish this conversation with any...
Sorry, what?
Any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts?
On sim... I think we're just gonna turn this into a podcast, but on sim, on drifting, hanging out with your boy Alejandro Sante, having some good Korean food. Any closing thoughts? Any shout outs?
I don't have any shout outs, but closing thoughts. I don't know. The summary of our conversation of, in short, sim racing, just playing Assetto Corsa in general and drifting it, you'll be able to take this and go IRL and apply a lot of it. It's not the ultimate replacement, and hopefully it isn't, because why do we build cars? Why do we buy cars? Why do we drift? Because we love it, right? So you got to go out in the world and do it. You don't want to... Alex?
Yes.
Did you ever skateboard?
I did.
Would you want a virtual skateboard, or would you want to really
Fuck
skateboard?
no.
Okay,
but virtual driving is significantly better, in my opinion, than virtual skateboarding. I mean, Tony Hawk
That's
Pro
true.
Skater is dope.
I don't know. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is like the best.
But
so.
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. But skateboarding IRL it's just so visceral, and I'm sure that's the same way drifting is.
100%, dude. There is everything that you get from going to a skate park with your friends and skating all day. You don't quite get that with sim drifting. Even when like sim drifting with friends in a server and stuff, like, it's really cool and it's really fun.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
But dude, it's just,
it's not a replacement for the real thing.
You're missing out on you're just missing out on that piece.
Grab the camera real quick though. I will say this though. All right. So just because it's not a replacement for the real thing, that's not our goal here. Our goal here is to use sim drifting and real life drifting in tandem, like together, but not like this, but like this, right? Because if you combine the two, that's when you can get the best results, in my opinion. That's why we're doing all of this. Sorry, I should say, that's why I am doing all of this. And so, because of that, I believe that with sim drifting, we can reduce the barrier of entry to IRL drifting. Secondly, we can form not only auxiliary communities in the drifting world, which is what keeps the sport going, or the lifestyle, or whatever, but we can form a larger community of a whole. Because if I drift in real life, I will never drift with people from Europe. I will never drift with people from Japan unless I physically go there, right? However, I can drift with my buddies from Europe. I can drift with my buddies from Japan every night on sim, and I can eventually use those relationships that I formed to go drift with them in real life now, because I've already met them, and we can be like, hey, let's go rent a car at Ebisu. Let's go, to Miyogi and do some fucking, late night skids or whatever, right? Like these things, we, instead of saying one is better than the other, or, like this, we can do this and make it even better, right? That's kind of where I'm at. So, have a good night. Thank you guys so much for listening. I think we're just going to make this like one long video, and you can, watch it or whatever, and we'll separate the vlog. Editor's note, the lighting probably really sucks, and the sound quality is really bad because we have all the fans on, but sorry, hopefully it's good.
You should just podcast it.
See you next podcast it.
Podcast.
We should definitely just podcast it. We'll just podcast it, and then we'll throw the video up of Matt just drifting, and we'll podcast it. So stay tuned. Maybe this is episode 1 of the podcast of Shadow Realm. I think we decided on a name, but I don't remember. I'm really tired. Have a good night.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.